In the world of diplomacy, some words carry the weight of tectonic plates. A few days ago, French President Emmanuel Macron spoke precisely such words. In the heart of Paris, before the eyes of the entire world, he announced that the recognition of a Palestinian state is no longer a taboo for France. At first glance, this appears to be an epical, peacemaking move that changes decades of European policy and offers hope to an oppressed people. But is this truly a story about Palestine, or is it merely the latest battle in another, much older and more hidden war, a decades-long unacknowledged conflict between France and America for the soul of the Middle East? Mainstream analysis is conspicuously silent on this, as it contradicts the narrative of a unified West. But the evidence is undeniable. To understand why Paris is today extending a diplomatic hand to a Palestine de facto led by Hamas, we must return to the cold winter of 1978, when a suburb of that same Paris became the incubator for Ayatollah Khomeini and his Islamic revolution. In this story, we will follow two parallel narratives: the tragic struggle for Palestinian statehood and the cynical geopolitical game of great powers. These two stories are inextricably linked, and they converge at the dangerous point where we find ourselves today. To understand why the Palestinian issue remains an open wound in world politics, we must confront the fact that Palestine, in the modern sense, has never been a sovereign state. Its fate has always been in the hands of others. During 400 years of Ottoman rule, it was merely a collection of administrative districts, or sanjaks, within larger provinces like Syria. Local identity was tied to family, clan, or religion, not a national consciousness. After World War I, the British Mandate turned it into a protectorate, where London, with its contradictory promises to both Jews and Arabs, sowed the seeds of a conflict that endures to this day. The key moment of missed opportunity occurred in 1947, when the United Nations adopted Resolution 181, known as the Partition Plan. The plan envisioned the creation of two states, one Arab and one Jewish, with Jerusalem as a separate, internationally administered entity, a corpus separatum. The Jewish side, though reluctant, accepted the plan as a pragmatic solution. The Arab states and the Palestinian leadership categorically rejected it. This rejection was fatal. After the War of 1948, which Palestinians call the Nakba, or catastrophe, the State of Israel was created, while the planned Arab state of Palestine was never born. The territories designated for it were occupied, the West Bank by Jordan and the Gaza Strip by Egypt. It wasn't until November 15, 1988, that Yasser Arafat symbolically declared independence in Algiers, launching the first major wave of recognitions. To date, 146 out of 193 UN member states recognize Palestine, which has also held non-member observer state status since 2012. But it has remained a state on paper. For decades, the mantra for a solution was the two-state formula. This idea gained momentum with the Oslo Accords in the 1990s, creating the Palestinian Authority. However, the Oslo process was structurally flawed from its inception. It created a Palestinian Authority with limited autonomy over a fragmented territory divided into zones A, B, and C. This system gave Palestinians civil control only over disconnected enclaves, Zone A, primarily urban centers, while Israel retained full security and administrative control over the vast majority of the West Bank, Zone C, which contained all the Israeli settlements and crucial resources. This arrangement created not the foundation for a state, but a political Bantustan, a Swiss cheese statelet, where the holes were larger than the cheese itself. While this process was ongoing, the expansion of Israeli settlements never ceased. In fact, it accelerated. Every new house built on occupied land was another nail in the coffin of a viable, contiguous Palestinian state, making the two-state solution a practical impossibility long before it was declared politically dead. At the heart of the Israeli-Arab conflict lies a fundamental question: who has the right to the land? Both sides invoke autochthony and a history stretching back millennia. However, the very history of the name Palestine introduces an incredible paradox into this debate. The land bears the name of the ancient Philistines. Modern science has confirmed that this people were neither Jews nor Arabs. They were an ancient Balkan and Old European people, likely related to the Pelasgians, Illyrians, and ancient Macedonians. As part of the Sea Peoples, a maritime confederation that shook the Mediterranean, they settled on the coast of the Levant around 1200 BCE. They brought their culture and customs with them, evidenced by their distinctive Mycenaean-style pottery, their architectural preference for central hearths, and a diet rich in pork, all of which stood in stark contrast to their Semitic neighbors. But over the centuries, they assimilated into the dominant Semitic environment and eventually disappeared as a distinct people. They left behind only a name. That name was later used by the Romans in the 2nd century CE as a political weapon. After crushing the second Jewish revolt led by Bar Kokhba, Emperor Hadrian, intending to punish the Jews and erase their connection to the land, officially renamed the province of Judea to Syria Palestina. The name of the ancient enemies of Israel thus became the official name of their homeland. The paradox is fundamental. Both groups today are fighting for a land that was named after a third European people who were themselves newcomers. This does not grant rights to either side, but it serves as a powerful corrective to absolutist claims of indigeneity. It shows that the history of this land is a story of layers, migrations, and assimilations. This historical vacuum and the ambiguity over the absolute right to the land create the perfect space for external powers to manipulate both sides for their own interests. To understand French policy in the Middle East, one must understand Gaullism. It is not just a political ideology, but a deeply ingrained vision of France as a great independent power that refuses to be a mere satellite of Washington. Ever since Charles de Gaulle, France has strived to conduct its own foreign policy, the politique de grandeur, demonstrating it through the development of nuclear weapons and the famous withdrawal from NATO's military command in 1966. This desire for autonomy was not just about national pride. It was driven by a cold, hard economic reality, the control of oil. In the post-war world, the global oil market was dominated by the Seven Sisters, a cartel of powerful Anglo-American companies that controlled the flow of Middle Eastern oil. For France, a country with almost no domestic oil reserves, this represented an existential threat. The greatest humiliation that cemented this fear was the Suez Crisis of 1956. When France, Great Britain, and Israel attacked Egypt, US President Eisenhower, through direct threats of economic sanctions against Britain and pressure on the pound sterling, forced them into a humiliating withdrawal. For Paris, the lesson was clear. American control over oil meant American control over French foreign policy. Another profound and perhaps even more formative influence was the traumatic Algerian War of Independence, 1954-1962. The brutal 8-year conflict, the loss of what was considered an integral part of France, and the near-civil war it provoked within France itself, forced the nation to fundamentally rethink its relationship with the Arab and Muslim world. It shattered the colonial mindset and replaced it with a cold, pragmatic realpolitik. De Gaulle understood that France could no longer be a colonial master, but could become a powerful political and economic partner to the newly independent Arab nations. This pivot was not just ideological, it was a strategic necessity to counter the overwhelming influence of the two superpowers, the USA and the USSR, and to secure French interests in a post-colonial era. The key pivot occurred after the Six-Day War of 1967. De Gaulle, who until then had been a key ally to Israel, made a dramatic turn, imposing an arms embargo and adopting a distinctly pro-Arab policy. This was a direct geopolitical and geoeconomic move aimed against America, designed to secure independent access to oil and position France as the key European partner for the Arab world. The decision of France under President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing to grant asylum and a global platform to Ayatollah Khomeini in the Paris suburb of Neauphle-le-Château from October 1978 to February 1979 was the ultimate expression of this strategy. It was a coldly calculated geopolitical move with oil at its very core. France saw the Islamic Revolution as a golden opportunity to shatter the Anglo-American monopoly over Iran's vast reserves and insert its national champions, Total and Elf Aquitaine, into the game. Khomeini's anti-Israeli rhetoric perfectly suited France's pro-Arab strategy. Neauphle-le-Château became the global command center of the revolution. This quiet French village was transformed into an unprecedented global media hub for a revolutionary leader. Khomeini held daily press conferences, giving interviews to the BBC, ABC, Le Monde, and countless other major news outlets. The French government ensured he had access to a state-of-the-art telephone line, allowing him to directly communicate with his followers in Iran. Western media, with French facilitation, often portrayed him in a romantic light as a spiritual ascetic, a philosopher king, an Islamic Gandhi who sought only justice for his people. They downplayed his radical theocratic ambitions and violent rhetoric, presenting him as a viable alternative to the Shah's corrupt regime. From this idyllic French base, his inflammatory messages, recorded on audio cassettes, were mass-produced and smuggled into every corner of Iran, serving as the primary tool for mobilizing the masses. France didn't just host Khomeini, it gave him the stage and the microphone to burn down an American ally. The role of the Soviet Union was less direct in the making of the revolution, but its subsequent support for the survival and consolidation of the Islamic Republic, especially in the critical early years and during the devastating Iran-Iraq War, was essential. For the Kremlin, the fall of the Shah, America's closest ally on the USSR's southern borders, was an immense strategic gain. Although Khomeini's regime was fiercely anti-communist, neither East nor West but the Islamic Republic, and soon began a brutal persecution of the Iranian Tudeh Communist Party. Its radical, irreconcilable anti-Americanism was of far greater importance to Soviet strategists. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," became the guiding maxim. After an initial period of mutual distrust, the USSR, and especially post-Soviet Russia, developed a significant and multi-layered cooperation with Iran. This included crucial nuclear cooperation, where Russia completed the construction of Iran's first nuclear power plant at Bushehr, a project started by the Germans before the revolution. This partnership was best demonstrated in Syria, where Russia and Iran intervened militarily to save the regime of Bashar al-Assad, although the Russians eventually withdrew with little reaction to subsequent events, showing the often unreliable nature of their support when faced with direct confrontation. From the moment Ayatollah Khomeini triumphantly entered Tehran, the Islamic Republic of Iran established the founding, financing, arming, and ideological direction of extremist and terrorist organizations around the world as a central pillar of its foreign policy. This was not a sporadic activity, but a systematic long-term strategy of exporting the revolution and creating an axis of resistance against the US, Israel, and the Sunni Arab regimes that Tehran considers American puppets. This strategy's first European testing ground was the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina from 1992 to 1995. Iran recognized a unique opportunity to establish a foothold in the heart of Europe. While the West hesitated and imposed an arms embargo that primarily hurt the army of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Tehran acted decisively. Hundreds of members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and agents of the Ministry of Intelligence arrived in Bosnia, officially as humanitarian workers, but unofficially as military instructors and ideological commissars. Bypassing the embargo, Iran supplied crucial weaponry, including anti-tank missiles and organized military training camps. The most notorious unit formed under their influence was the El Mujahid detachment, composed of foreign jihadists and radicalized local fighters. This unit, while formerly under the command of the RBH Third Corps, operated by its own rules, committing brutal war crimes against Serb and Croat prisoners and civilians, primarily Christians. These crimes included ritual beheadings, which were filmed and used as propaganda. Iran's goal in Bosnia was twofold: to militarily assist the Bosniak side, but more importantly, to create a long-term ideological and intelligence stronghold in the Balkans. This Bosnian model of intervention was then perfected across the Middle East. Hezbollah in Lebanon emerged as a direct consequence of Iranian intervention after the 1982 Israeli invasion of Lebanon, turning into the world's most powerful non-state military force. Then came the crucial support for Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Although Sunni organizations, Iran has for decades generously funded and armed them. This is a prime example of Iranian pragmatism, where ideological differences are set aside for the higher strategic goal of destroying Israel. The strategy continued with the Houthis in Yemen and militias in Iraq. Iran provides the Houthis with sophisticated weaponry, including ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and armed drones, which they use to target Saudi Arabia and threaten global maritime trade. In Iraq, after the US invasion, Iran systematically worked to create and control a network of powerful Shia militias, such as Kataib Hezbollah and Asaib al-Haq, which became Tehran's extended arm, ensuring an Iranian land bridge to Syria and Lebanon. Now we tie all the threads together. We return to Emmanuel Macron and his announcement of recognizing Palestine. After everything we have seen, France's Gaullist ambitions, its cynical role in the creation of revolutionary Iran, and how that same Iran created and armed Hamas, which today rules Gaza, does anyone still believe that Macron's move is just a humanitarian gesture? This is déjà vu. This is a repetition of the same perfidious French policy, just with new actors. In 1978, Paris provided a platform for Khomeini to topple a key American ally, the Shah of Iran. In 2024, Paris announces the recognition of a Palestinian state, giving diplomatic legitimacy to an entity de facto run by Hamas, an Iranian proxy, in order to weaken and isolate another key American ally, Israel. It is the same game, the same goal, to undermine American influence in the Middle East and position France as an alternative power. Macron's move is also a calculated maneuver in domestic politics. In a country with the largest Muslim population in Western Europe and facing a relentless challenge from Marine Le Pen's radical right, a pro-Palestinian stance is a politically useful tool. It serves to appeal to left-leaning voters and segments of the immigrant community, potentially shoring up his fragile political base. It allows him to present himself as a moral leader on the world stage, in contrast to what is often perceived as a biased American position, thus attempting to outmaneuver both his domestic and international rivals. This adds another, deeply cynical layer to his foreign policy, suggesting it is driven as much by the electoral map of France as by the political map of the Middle East. The ultimate irony is that France, which today faces the brutal consequences of Islamist terrorism on its own streets, is once again playing with fire by legitimizing a movement that is a direct ideological descendant of the revolution it helped birth. The Israeli-Arab conflict is a real and tragic fire, with its own history and victims. But what global analysis persistently fails to see is the hidden bellows fanning that fire, the French-American rivalry. Many events in the Middle East are not just the result of local tensions, but also the collateral damage in this covert war between two supposed Western allies. Macron's move, seen through this lens, is not a solution, an escalation. It is a cold, calculated geopolitical move in that long-running war for global influence. And just like last time with Khomeini, the consequences could be catastrophic, not only for the region but for France itself. The highest price, as always, will be paid by the peoples of the Middle East, as Paris and Washington fight for dominance on the ruins of their lands, proving once again that in the great game of nations, some pawns are always considered expendable.